Good morning, class. Hope you guys were enjoying your snowy day, enjoying being at home. Hope you're staying warm. I'm excited to to read with you all with King Arthur right now. We only have one more section of readings before we are done with King Arthur. So I hope you've been enjoying reading about King Arthur and the Round Table. We have 6 more chapters that we're going to cover, and I'm going to do all 6 chapters in this video. But remember, if you start losing focus, you can pause the video, come back to it later during that day, or we have all week to finish King Arthur. So you have time. You have all week to read King Arthur, these last 6 chapters, and then do the chapter study questions, and we'll finish King Arthur. So let's just get right into it by reviewing what we read last time. What are some things that we read and learned about? Well, if we remember, they were all on the quest for the Holy Grail. And we started off by reading about Sir Gawain and his travels and how he was prideful, and he wasn't, holy of heart to be able to be led to the Holy Grail. And just like many of the other knights, they had the wrong reasonings to find the Holy Grail. And so they were never given the opportunity to see the Holy Grail. We learned about how only 3 of the knights that saw the Grail would actually return. And that was Sir Bors. He was the only knight that saw the Holy Grail, was able to return from their quest. And the last little bit that we read about, and how the last little section that we read ended, was about the maid of Astolat, and how she fell in love with Sir Lancelot. And Sir Lancelot told the maid that his heart was to the queen, and that he wouldn't marry the maid. And the maid ended up passing and dying, and it was her own prophecy that ended up coming true. And that's kind of where we left off. So we're going to jump into chapter 17, the Queen and the Poison Apple, and we are going to start reading there. Okay, remember, if you start losing focus, take a pause the video, come back to it later, and I want you all to be successful with your chapter study questions. So let us get into it, okay? The Queen and the Poison Apple. After the quest for the Holy Grail ended and all those knights who survived had come back to court, there was a feeling of letdown. The knights of the Round Table had waited 20 years for the coming of the knight who was to fill the siege perilous, and had worked hard fighting the invaders and restoring safety and peace to Britain. Now Sir Galahad had brought to an end the adventures of the Holy Grail and died, so all that was over. A new generation of invaders was prowling the coast. Many of the knights were middle-aged, and fighting all had to be done again. The knights were in low spirits, and idle quarrels became too important. Sir Lancelot took every opportunity to keep away from court and go on patrols. One day, when he was away, the Queen gave a dinner and invited 24 of the senior knights. Among them was Sir Gawain, who was especially known to have an appetite for fruit, especially apples and pears. Any host took special care over them when Sir Gawain was coming to dinner. The Queen also asked Gawain's brother Agravain, Gaheris, and Gareth, and his half-brother Mordred. Together they made up the Orkney clan, who had all conspired to murder Sir Lamorak years ago. Among the other guests was Sir Penel, who was cousin to Sir Lamorak, but who never said anything about it, and bided his time for revenge. With these came Sir Bors, Sir Kay, and Sir Palomides. If Sir Lancelot had been there, nothing disgraceful would have happened. But Sir Penel saw his chance. He poisoned some apples and arranged them in the dish nearest to Sir Gawain. Dinner went on. There was music. The Queen was merry. They talked of Sir Lancelot and wondered what great feat he would have come back to tell about. The time came for dessert. Sir Penel watched Sir Gawain between the candles, but poison was a clumsy choice of weapon. Sir Gawain was talking, and Sir Patrice next to him took an apple and ate it. Then he swelled up and fell down dead. Uproar broke out. Sir Penel kept his head and said nothing. Everyone naturally suspected the Queen, who had arranged the dinner. Sir Gawain was convinced that the poison had been meant for him because an apple had been chosen. Sir Bors tried to make him be quiet, but Gawain's wild nature could not be controlled, and he stood up hotly and accused the queen. Guinevere stood like a statue, silent, seeing it was a plot, and thinking it was aimed at her because Sir Launcelot was not there to defend her. She did not answer, so no one spoke up for her defense. Sir Mador de la Porte, cousin to Sir Patrice, challenged the queen and accused her of the murder of his cousin. After that, there could be no stepping back. The king was fetched, the charge repeated, and Sir Mador demanded the queen be burned to death. The method of trial was a battle between Sir Mador and a champion for the queen. The king was forbidden by his own laws from fighting for his wife, but felt sure that a champion would come forward, so he told Sir Mador to ask for a day for trial. Sir Mador then pointed out that none of the knights at the dinner would fight for the queen, as they all believed her guilty. Sir Mador saw the king's face change, and he immediately made the formal request for a day for the trial. The king chose the longest space of time that the law allowed, and fixed a day 15 days from then. Sir Mador was to appear armed in the meadow outside Camelot. If a champion appeared for the queen, God would reveal the right. If none appeared, then the queen must be burned. She would be tied at the stake before the contest, ready for the judgment. "I am answered," said Sir Mador, and the king dismissed them all. Here's a little picture of Sir Mador. When the king and queen were alone, they had a desperate discussion about finding Sir Launcelot and what to do if he could not be found. "What is the matter with you," said the king, "that you could not keep Sir Launcelot on your side?" Then the king thought of Sir Launcelot's closest friend, Sir Bors. True, he had been at the dinner, but he might defend the queen for Sir Launcelot's sake. The queen went that night to Sir Bors' apartment and made her request. He was most embarrassed by it. He had joined with the other knights in suspecting her, and they would think he was deliberately defending the guilty just because she was the queen. But when the king added his request to the queen's, then Sir Bors promised to fight as her champion unless a better knight than he should come forward. The queen wept with relief, and the king could say nothing, but took Sir Bors' hand and pressed it silently. Next day, Sir Bors had news that Sir Launcelot was on his way back. He promptly left the court without taking his squire or telling anyone where he was going, and rode to meet him. He told him the entire story, and Sir Launcelot felt sure that it was a plot against the queen. He immediately laid his plans and considered the weakness of Sir Mador. Sir Launcelot, like all good generals, never underestimated his enemy and tried to leave nothing to chance. "This has worked out just as I might have chosen," he said to Sir Bors. "Now you get ready for the fight, right up to the last moment, and delay things as much as you can, because you know Sir Mador gets much too excited when there is action, and the longer he is kept waiting, the wilder he will be when the battle begins." "So let me handle him," said Sir Bors. So Sir Bors went back to court that evening and announced that he was going to fight for the queen. Many knights objected, as he had known they would. He answered them, "Lords, it seems to me she has always been the most generous lady, with her gifts and her friendliness, that I ever saw or heard of. It would be a shame to all of us if we allowed her to be burned without striking a blow for her. So I tell you all that I will not allow it. For I do not think the queen is guilty of Sir Patrice's death. She had no quarrel with him, nor with any of us who were at the dinner. I am sure that it will be proved later, whatever it looks like now, that there was treason among us." Some of the knights came over to his side and agreed with him, and some did not. So the time went on. The 15th morning came, and everyone crowded to the jousting meadow. The space was bare, except for one tent at each side. Opposite the royal stand, a huge pile stood, ready to burn around an iron stake. There sat the queen, and the royal stand, King Arthur sat alone. Everywhere else the ground was black with people. Never had such a crowd been seen before. Punctually on time, a herald blew, and Sir Mador rode on to the ground, saluted the king, and in a voice echoing, hallooing through his visor, made his accusation against the queen. The answering herald blew, and out rode Sir Bors. He saluted the king and declared the accusations false. Sir Mador, who was very wrought up, demanded to join battle at once. Sir Bors delayed with some formal appeals, and held matters up for some time. Finally they retired to their tents and took their arms and prepared. Out rode Sir Mador, lance ready, his horse's neck lathered with excitement, caught from his rider. He cantered around the field, shouting his challenge. "Let your champion come forth if he dare." Hidden in the wood, Sir Launcelot watched him, noting every detail of his seat, his lance grip, the slant of his shield. He was circling a second time. The crowd was whispering. The king was glancing uneasily at Sir Bors' tent, when out from the woods there rode a strange knight, bearing an unknown shield, riding a white horse at full gallop. Sir Bors rode out to meet him. There was a meeting. The stranger claimed the right to be the queen's champion. The new knight was big and grim, and rode as well as Sir Launcelot. Challenges were exchanged. The king agreed. Sir Bors withdrew, and Sir Mador faced the strange knight down to the length of the lists. So the list is an arena for tournaments and other contests. So they fought in this arena. The first charge brought Sir Mador down, and the queen's heart leaped, for in that riding and that stroke she recognized Sir Launcelot. They fought on foot, and Sir Mador struggled desperately against the grim figure that stalked after him and beat blow on blow. But at last Sir Launcelot struck him down and stood over him, unlacing his helmet to cut off his head. Sir Mador begged for his life and acquitted the queen of his accusation. I will only grant you your life on condition that you never raise this accusation again, and that no mention is made on Sir Patrice's tomb of the queen's name. Here's a picture, Sir Launcelot and Sir Mador. Then Sir Mador withdrew his supporters to his tent. The strange knight walked across to the stairs of the royal stand. By that time the queen had been released and had joined the king. They both came down the stairs, greeted and thanked the knight, and took him back into the stand for a glass of wine. As he took off his helmet, there was a general shout of "Lancelot!" and "Du Lac!" The king took both his hands. The queen burst into tears, and around them gathered Sir Launcelot's family and all his friends, full of questions, exclamations, and joy. So it all ended happily, though at one time it had looked bad for the queen. The mystery of who poisoned the apple was not unraveled until an enchantress named Nimue came to court. She declared the guilty knight was Sir Pinel, and he proved her right by fleeing from court and going into hiding in France. There's chapter 17, crazy chapter. Let's jump into chapter 18. I'm just going to grab a swig of water really quick. Sir Meliagrance. Although Sir Launcelot rescued the queen in the affair of the poisoned apple, the attempt to dishonor her had been made, and might be made again. The queen was beautiful, and there were plenty of bad or reckless knights who would not hesitate to take a chance to kidnap her if Sir Launcelot was elsewhere at the time. Sir Meliagrance, who was a coward, thought he was in love with the queen for a long time. His love was the kidnapping and not the knightly kind. He waited for a chance when Sir Launcelot was away. It came on May Day. The court was in London. The queen arranged a party to ride out into the woods and fields around Westminster. Sir Launcelot was at a council with the king and could not come, so the queen went out without him. She was accompanied by 10 knights and 10 ladies. Each knight had a squire and 2 servants. All were unarmed, wearing green silk for May Day, and carrying only light court swords. Sir Meliagrance lived in a castle 7 miles from Westminster, and there he had many men at arms and archers. When the queen was out with all her knights, out of the wood came Sir Meliagrance, with 200 men, all preparing for fighting. He ordered the queen and her knights to halt. "Traitor knight," said the queen, "what are you thinking of? Will you bring shame on yourself? Remember, you are a knight of the Round Table. Think before you shame all knighthood and yourself and me." "This fine talk is all very well," replied Sir Meliagrance. "Madam, I have loved you many a year, and never until now could I get you at such a disadvantage. Therefore I will take you as I find you." At this rude speech the queen's knights fell on Sir Meliagrance and his men, without armor and with no hope of success. They fought with such skill that they killed 40 of the enemy before they themselves were all disabled. When the queen saw that they were wounded and surrounded, she cried to Sir Meliagrance that she would yield to him on condition that her knights were spared and were brought with her and lodged wherever she was lodged. Sir Meliagrance gave way, though he had meant to kill them all and take only the queen, but time was passing and he was afraid some hidden watcher in the woods might send a message to Sir Launcelot. He meant to be safe inside his castle wall before that happened. Meanwhile, the queen outwitted him. While the wounded men were being helped onto horses, the queen had a word with a young page, a boy of 12, who rode a fast, fresh pony. "When you see a chance," she said, "slip away and take this ring to Sir Launcelot, and pray him as he loves me to rescue me, and don't spare your horse." The boy was on fire with pride and determination, and took the first chance that came. When the big horses were crowded across a little stream, and he had to wait until they were over, he turned his pony and spurred down a hedge path. And though some of Maleagrance's men chased him, he got away. Sir Maleagrance knew what that meant. Sir Launcelot would arrive. He hurried the queen and the knights into the castle and sent 30 archers to ambush Sir Launcelot, telling them to shoot especially at his horse, for he had no faith that even 30 of them could overcome the great knight himself. The queen insisted on having the 10 wounded knights in her apartments, where she and her ladies looked after them. Shut out, Sir Maleagrance cursed and paced about the castle, preparing for the dreaded arrival of the queen's champion. The page made his way safely out of the woods and galloped his pony at full speed along the open road to Westminster. The queen's ring won him instant admission to the palace and Sir Launcelot's apartments. The great knight was just returning from the king's council. At the words, "A page with the queen's ring," he halted and summoned the boy. He looked closely at the ring, and as he heard the story, his color changed, and one of his rare angers came over him. There was no more talking then. His armor was brought, his horse prepared, and a message sent to Sir Lavaine to follow him. Within the hour, he was going as hard as the heavy charger would carry him down the road to the woods. It had not occurred to him to take a troop of knights with him. He meant to settle this alone. Coming down to the river at Westminster, he met a group of pack horses and drivers taking all the road over the bridge. So he rode his horse straight down the bank into the water and swam across. From there he made straight for the place where he knew the queen had gone. Trampled earth showed the battleground, and soon he was riding hard on the tracks of the company going back to the castle. Suddenly the men in ambush sprang out on him, shot his horse down. Raging, Sir Launcelot came at them on foot with his huge sword. They all turned and ran. Sir Launcelot trampled on, over ditches, and through the wet fields in his heavy armor, getting more and more angry. He heard the welcome sound of a horse, and a woodman's cart came down the path with 2 carters in it. It was one of the rules of etiquette that no knight could ride in a cart. Sir Launcelot was too angry to care. He asked the carters if they would drive him to the castle, 2 miles off. The driver refused. Sir Launcelot scrambled into the cart and gave the man such a blow with his mailed fist that he fell over backwards, dead. The other carter hastily said that he would drive the knight wherever he wanted, and so Sir Launcelot came to the castle. The queen and her ladies were sitting restlessly in a bay window, refusing all conversation with Sir Maleagrance and his men, watching and waiting for Sir Launcelot. Up the winding approach from the woods to the castle gates came a horse and a cart. As they watched it, the queen gave a cry, for she saw standing up in the cart an armed knight. She sprang up, and her ladies pressed to the window. "How lucky am I that he is my friend," she cried. Sir Launcelot arrived alone at the castle gate. Lifting his visor, he roared in a voice that rang over the wall and in all the windows. "Where are you, false Maleagrance? Come out, you traitor, you and all your gang, for I am here, Sir Launcelot du Lac, to fight with you all." He seized the little gate and hurled it back on the porter who was hurrying down to lock it, and struck the man under the ear so that he broke his neck and killed him. He stepped into the archway and then into the courtyard, and everyone hid from him and kept dead quiet. He held the entire castle at bay. Sir Maleagrance was terrified. He ran to the queen while Sir Launcelot raged in the courtyard and begged her to save him from Sir Launcelot. The queen went swiftly down the winding stairs and out into the courtyard and took Sir Launcelot by both hands. He was still shouting for the traitor knight to come out and face him. The queen laughed gently at him, thanked him for his coming, and said, "The knight has sorely regretted this entire misadventure that he has embarked on." Sir Launcelot, still half angry about his dead horse, answered gruffly, "Madam, if I had known you had made up with him so easily, I wouldn't have made such haste to get to you." The queen held his arm and smiled at him. "Why do you say that? Are you sorry you have done so well? You know I never made up with him because I liked him, but to stop a brawl and a scandal. Madam, no one except my lord King Arthur and you could stop me from killing Sir Maleagance before I go away. I know that well, she answered gently. You shall have everything arranged as you decide. Sir Lancelot's anger died, and he smiled back at her. Madam, so long as you are pleased, it pleases me. And they went upstairs together to confront Sir Maleagance. Trial by battle was arranged 8 days from then in the fields beside Westminster. Sir Maleagance withdrew, heavy-hearted, bent on getting out of it by one means or another. Sir Lancelot went to talk to the 10 wounded knights, and after that everyone settled down to spend the day resting and looking after the sick men. The next day they would all return to Westminster. Sir Maleagance invited Sir Lancelot to inspect the castle. He had made some arrangements beforehand, and on the tour Sir Lancelot stepped on a trapdoor and fell into a deep cellar onto a pile of straw. Sir Maleagance fastened the trapdoor and went back to his rooms. When inquiry was made, he professed to know nothing of the visitor's whereabouts, and everyone thought that Sir Lancelot had suddenly left the castle and had gone back to Westminster. He often made these unexpected departures and arrivals, which were a safeguard in times of danger. Meantime, Sir Lavaine arrived, and next morning he escorted the Queen and her party back to court. When they arrived, the Queen was surprised not to find Sir Lancelot, but everyone assumed he was on some business of his own. But next day Sir Maleagance appeared, not looking at all like a man who was due to fight Sir Lancelot in a week. He was almost careless about his behavior to the Queen and swaggered about in a way that amazed everyone. He kept this up day after day until the Queen became uneasy. She spoke to several knights, and everyone agreed that Sir Maleagance's behavior, combined with Sir Lancelot's absence, looked as if some mischief had been worked. Sir Lavaine asked for the privilege of fighting instead of the champion, if by any evil chance it should be necessary. The king granted it, saying he was sure some treachery had been done. All this time Sir Lancelot was shut up in the dark dungeon without sight of day. Food and drink were brought to him by the wife of one of the castle officers, who tried, like all women who came in contact with Sir Lancelot, to make him unfaithful to his vow to the Queen. She offered to set him free if he would become her knight. Politely but persistently, Sir Lancelot refused. He knew his vow represented the ideal of honor and knighthood. If he would break his vow to the Queen in order to fight for her, his fighting for her would have no truth. On the morning of the battle, the lady's heart gave way. She knew that if she kept Sir Lancelot prisoner, he would hate her forever, and if she let him free in time, he would at least remember her with goodwill for that. So Sir Lancelot escaped in the nick of time. The heralds were shouting, and Sir Lavaine was ready at his end of the ground, when there was a commotion in the crowd, and the great horse and rider came thundering onto the field. Roars went up as he was recognized. Saluting the king, he told everyone in a loud voice how Sir Maleagance had trapped him. The cheering changed to howls and hisses, and the crowd prepared for another of Sir Lancelot's victories. But Sir Maleagance was a trickster to the last. The heralds blew, the knights withdrew to their ends of the lists, lances were poised, the trumpet sounded, and they charged. Sir Maleagance slid off his horse, and Sir Lancelot dismounted and approached sword in hand, but Sir Maleagance refused to fight. He yielded himself in the most groveling language that chivalry allowed, and called on Sir Lancelot as a fellow knight of the Round Table not to kill him. He had lost all the privileges of knighthood by kidnapping the Queen and trapping Sir Lancelot, and yet he claimed them now to save himself. Sir Lancelot hesitated. He could not bring himself to kill a man who crawled on the ground and would not get up and fight, but if he let him go, he knew he would be treacherous again. "Get up, man," he explained, "and fight." "Not I," replied Sir Maleagance, who was trading on Sir Lancelot's chivalry and knew he was safe while he refused to fight. "I will never get up until you agree that I have surrendered." "Well, I will make you an offer," said Sir Lancelot. "I will take my helmet off and all armor down my left side, and I will have my left arm tied behind me, and I will fight you like that." Sir Maleagance stood up. Such a handicap had never been heard of. "My lord King Arthur," he shouted, "you heard this offer. Remember it, because I am going to accept it. Have him disarmed and bound according to his own offer." The king spoke easily. The The king spoke uneasily to his friend. "You cannot mean that, Sir Launcelot. You spoke in heat. You cannot keep such terms." "I will, my lord, for I never go back on my word." Everyone's heart sank as the disarming began. Protests arose all around the field, and the king and the queen fell silent. Only the enemies of the king, Sir Mordred and Sir Agravain, and the evil men who plotted with them, leaned forward and suddenly drew breath. If Lancelot were killed, who knew what chance for evil might open in the kingdom? Sir Lancelot was ready. His head, neck, half his body, and his left leg were bare, and his arm was tied behind him. Most men could not even lift their sword with only one hand, still use them. Sir Lancelot knew the odds against him were so heavy that the first encounter could settle it. He was not afraid. Sir Meliagrance rushed in. Sir Lancelot sprang aside, swinging as he leaped, and there was a crash. Sir Lancelot stood, waiting to be unbound, and men dragged Sir Meliagrance off the field. His head and helmet were split in two. Roar upon roar went up from the crowd. Sir Mordred and Sir Agravain sat back and waited for another day. Wow, that was the climax of battle right there. Being so disarmed and just crushing his enemy. Sir Lancelot is awesome. Okay, that was chapter 18. We're going to jump into chapter 19. Remember, if you were kind of losing focus and not following along, please pause the video and come back to it. All right. In spite of the great deeds by Sir Lancelot and others, the Round Table was breaking down. The ideal of brotherhood and justice formed by King Arthur had been maintained for more than 30 years. The glory of the Round Table was such that in every generation, wherever men are moved by acts of love, brotherhood, and self-sacrifice, the life of King Arthur and the Round Table springs up again in their minds. The final breakdown was caused by war between the king and Sir Lancelot. This tragedy was brought about by the Orkney clan, who fed their great anger until the greatest knights in Britain were all slain. The Orkney men were the sons of King Arthur's sisters, Margis, Queen of Orkney, married to King Lot, who had been killed in war. The head of it was Gawain, and under him were his brothers Gaheris, Agravain, and Gareth, and Mordred, his half-brother, and all their relations. They were ambitious men who wanted power rather than justice. They were jealous of any man greater than themselves, and especially the king's right-hand man, Sir Lancelot. To them he was a Frenchman who, by a hold on the queen, had wormed his way into power and position that should be theirs. They were determined to bring down Sir Lancelot and the queen at any cost, by lies and hate if a true opportunity did not arise. Only Gawain and Gareth were exceptions, but the rest of the clan were full of hate. Their leaders were Agravain and Mordred. Now Sir Agravain called a family council. He began by saying that Sir Lancelot was plotting to make himself king with the queen's help, and that it was the clan's duty as relatives of King Arthur to defend him. The result was that Sir Mordred, Sir Agravain, and 12 kindred knights of the Round Table caught Sir Lancelot unarmed in an ambush in the palace. He was alone with the queen and had no armor on, with only his sword. The door was locked, and the 14 stood in the passage outside. They called on him to come out as a traitor and be taken. Both Sir Lancelot and the queen knew that if the Orkney knights dared to do this in the palace itself, it was an open declaration of war. Sir Lancelot was desperately afraid for the queen. If he were killed, the traitor clan would burn her alive. Now I would sooner have my armor on me than be lord of all Christendom, he said. The enemy knights were preparing to break in the door. Lancelot called to them and said he was going to open. The queen stood behind the door, and Lancelot opened it a little. Sir Colgrevance rushed in, and the queen slammed the door and bolted it. Lancelot sprang on Sir Colgrevance, and with one blow of his bare fist broke his neck. He and the queen got the armor off the dead man and laced it on Sir Lancelot. Then the queen hid, and Sir Lancelot threw open the door. At the first stroke he killed Sir Agravain, and one after another all the rest. But unfortunately, when Sir Agravain Agravain fell, Sir Mordred fled, sure now of being sole leader of the clan. Now he was the ill fame of bringing about the ruin of the kingdom. Here's a picture of just what took place. Nice little tricky ruse right there to get armor on Sir Lancelot. Sir Lancelot stood breathing hard among the slain, 13 knights of the King's Round Table killed in his own palace. However true a friend he was, the king would have to punish Sir Lancelot for this. He left the queen, who fully understood the seriousness of the situation, promising her his support in all dangers that might be coming, and went back to his own apartments. There he called an urgent council of his own Benwick clan, Ector, Bors, Lionel, and many others, including Levine of Astolat. All attended the meeting. When they had all heard the story, Sir Bors said, "We have received much good with you and much honor. We will take the ill with you as we have taken the good." They all agreed, too, that he must stand by the queen. Mischief was afoot, and they knew it would strike first at her. "So, my fair lords, my kin, and my friends," said Sir Lancelot, knowing that it was possible that civil war might break out, "what will ye do?" "We will do as you will do," replied Sir Bors. So Sir Lancelot outlined his plan, and they filled in the details. Meanwhile, Sir Mordred and Sir Gawain led their clan to demand an audience of the king. They told him that Sir Agravain and 12 members of their family had caught Sir Lancelot plotting with the queen and had been killed for their pains. They demanded that the queen should be burned and Sir Lancelot outlawed. The king heard them out. With his heart breaking, the Orkney men had beaten him at last. For years they had been gnawing at the foundations of order, justice, and love by indifference, violent angers, and lies. Now they had succeeded and had brought down the king's work. The king knew that the Orkneys were too powerful to be ignored. 13 Round Table knights of their clan killed by Sir Lancelot had to be avenged. But the king was certain that Mordred had worked some trick. The triumph showing in his pale face convinced the king of it. "Make ready," the king said in a voice they had never heard, and he gave orders to arrest the queen. The next morning, as Sir Lancelot expected, Sir Mordred carried out the first of his plans. The queen was led out to be burned. The Benwick ambush was ready, and at the signal they fell upon the procession and escort. Hardly a man escaped the fury of Sir Lancelot and his companions. This first engagement of the war that was to kill all the leaders of chivalry was, with the last battle, the most bitter of all. 24 knights were killed, including Sir Gaheris and Sir Gareth, who fell by Sir Lancelot's hand, unknowingly in the confusion of combat. Again Sir Mordred escaped, for he was not among the escort. The queen stood trembling in her condemned criminal's smock, where her jailers had left her when they fled. Sir Lancelot rode to her and pulled her up behind him and told her to be of good cheer. The entire company rode off at a top speed to Sir Lancelot's stronghold of Joyous Gard and did not stop until they clattered into its safekeeping and the portcullis clanged down behind the last man. So the portcullis is a heavy iron grating suspended by chains and lowered to block the gateway of a castle or fortified town. So like a big gate that would come down with kind of like a big fence gate. Oh, we're on this page. The country was in turmoil. The war began to take shape as men joined one side or the other. Everyone feared and hated the Orkneys, and they did no good to the king's side. Yet the king held men's vows of loyalty. The entire kingdom was split. Most of the northern lords and knights gathered at Joyous Gard to fight on Sir Lancelot's side. In the meantime, the death of Gaheris and Gareth turned Gawain's last streak of goodness into deep hate, deeper even than Sir Mordred's. The preparations for war went on fast, and before summer was over, the king's army marched on Joyous Gard. They camped around the wall of the town, inside which the mighty castle towered over the houses. Sir Lancelot was the finest soldier of his time, and he had not neglected his own stronghold. The battle was fierce, and noble knights on both sides fell. King Arthur looked for Sir Lancelot to slay him. Sir Lancelot took the king's blows, but would not strike back. So Sir Bors faced King Arthur and struck him down. Sir Bors got off his horse, drew his sword, and said to Sir Launcelot, Sir, shall I end this war? For he meant to slay the king. Do not dare, said Sir Launcelot. Touch him no more. Then he got off his horse and raised the king and said to him, My lord king, for the love of God, in this fighting, remember what I have done in many places, and how now I am rewarded with evil. The king looked on his lifelong friend, and tears broke out of his eyes. Sir Launcelot's courtesy was greater than any other man's. Then the king could no longer look on him, and rode away, saying to himself, Alas, alas, that ever this war began. The battle went on for many days, breaking off with the fall of darkness and starting again in the morning. Sir Gawain wounded Sir Bors very badly and was wounded himself, but no one succeeded in hurting Sir Launcelot. The king's forces gained nothing at all. I'll reread that. The king's forces gained nothing at all. While this unsatisfactory series of battles was going on, a stern command came to the king from the Pope. News of the civil war and the threat to Queen Guinevere had reached the Pope, who sent the Bishop of Rochester with a sealed letter telling the king to take his wife back again and make peace with Sir Launcelot. The king returned to Camelot to receive the Pope's messenger. He would have made peace with Sir Launcelot gladly, but Sir Gawain would not let him. The Orkneys threatened the king with civil war if the king made peace with Sir Launcelot. Just gonna pause really quick. They're already in a civil war. It's kind of funny that Sir Gawain was saying, hey, "We're gonna have the civil war if you do make peace," but they are already in a civil war. But I guess it would be Civil War Part 2. Maybe the Orkneys would fight the king. All right, continue to read. They agreed, however, to take back the queen. Safe conduct was granted to Sir Launcelot, and the bishop took the message to Joyous Gard. Sir Launcelot was suspicious that it was a trap, but the Orkneys did get hold of the queen. But the bishop pledged his word and showed the Pope's order, and so Sir Launcelot let her go. He took 100 knights, clothed in green velvet, their horses clothed in the same to the heels, every knight holding an olive branch. The queen had 24 ladies following her dressed in the same way. Sir Launcelot was attended by 12 young nobles on chargers, dressed in white velvet with gold bands, with precious stones gleaming in their cloaks. Their horses' trappings were of white velvet. At their head rode the queen and Sir Launcelot, both in cloth of gold. 25 years ago, the young king had sent his friend Sir Launcelot to bring his bride Guinevere to Camelot, and they had come in the spring of youth and hope. Now that friend, veteran leader of the king's armies, and an outlaw in his realm, brought the queen under clouds of anger and suspicion back to a ruined court. They had all passed their youth, and now, when achievement should have been growing under their feet, black loss and failure appeared. Yet as King Arthur and Sir Launcelot met in each other's presence for the last time, they knew that they were stronger than these men who had beaten them by hate and trickery. Beaten them? No. They had fought the 12 great battles that pushed out the invaders, who had seen the Holy Grail and angels, who had made Britain from end to end a land of peace and justice. Could they be broken? They were forever greater than their enemies. But at this moment they could do nothing. Sir Gawain sat at the king's right hand, and the enemy filled every seat around him. Sir Launcelot alighted and gave the queen his hand. They came to the royal throne and knelt before the king. He sat silent. Sir Launcelot rose, raised the queen, and said in a voice for all to hear, "My king, by the Pope's command and yours I have brought to you my lady the queen, as is right. If there be any knight, or of whatever rank, except yourself, who will dare to say that she is not true to you, I here myself, Sir Launcelot du Lac, will prove upon his body that she is." Sir Gawain sprang up and began widely accusing him. He brought up the death of Gareth and Gaheris, and Sir Launcelot defended himself. Sir Gawain clenched his fists and rejected all offers of peace. He declared, while the king sat silent, that Sir Launcelot was exiled, and had 15 days to leave the country, and that wherever he went, Sir Gawain would follow him until one or the other was dead. Launcelot looked at the king. He sat like a stone. The queen stood motionless. Seconds passed. All three knew that the old life was broken, and that the end had come. Patching up was useless. Then Sir Launcelot sighed, the tears fell on his cheeks, and he said, Most noble Britain, whom I have loved above all other realms, here I won most of my honor, and now that I must depart in this manner, I regret that I ever came here, to be thus shamefully banished, and undeserved for no good reason. In this realm I had honor. By me and mine the Round Table won more in honor than it ever did by any one of you. He returned Sir Gawaine's challenge, and said he would answer his charge of treason wherever Sir Gawaine followed him. Then he turned to the queen, and there was silence in the hall. Madam, now I must leave you and this noble fellowship forever, and since it is so, I beseech you to pray for me, and I will pray for you. If any false tongues accuse you, my good lady, swiftly send me word. If any knight's hand under heaven may save you, I will save you. Slowly he kissed her, and then gave her into the king's hand. He turned, and the entire hall stood to mark his going. As many times in the past, these same men had stood to cheer his victories. In silence, magnificent and cloth of gold, Sir Launcelot passed through them and out of the realm of Britain, and the king and all the court, every knight and lady, all wept as if they were out of their minds, except Sir Gawaine.